Welcome to the Virtual Strategic Solutions Virtual Reality Simulation System. Accessing Legacy Dataset. Files loaded. Simulation ready. Before the Great War, the structure was known as the Gene Conservancy, a low-security all-female state prison in Nevada. A short time into the Mojave campaign, after 2253, the new California Republic Army commandeered the abandoned facility to house prisoners on a work release program. The inmates were tasked with maintaining a railroad alongside the Long 15 under military supervision, keeping the vital link between the Boneyard and New Vegas alive. However, as the NCR's conflict with Caesar's Legion escalated, especially after the First Battle of Hoover Dam, more and more prison guards were redeployed to the Colorado River and the protection of Hoover Dam, despite the warden's objections. As the convicts working on the railroads were provided with high explosives in their work and were predominantly composed of violent criminals jailed for serious crimes, this created ripe conditions for a prison break. Under the lead of Samuel Cook, an anarchist with a specialty in handling explosives, a small group of inmates gathered weapons and explosives in secret before instigating the rebellion. Blasting their way out of the cell block, they quickly overwhelmed what little NCR personnel were still present at the site, killed the warden, and established their own rule. The prisoner population dispersed, with some, including Philip Lem, following Cook north to eventually settle in Vault 19, while others stayed with Eddie, forming a gang and calling themselves Powder Gangers. They soon established camps around the correction facility to ward off attempts by scavengers and the NCR to take back the facility. Some left both the facility and the Powder Gangers and embarked further south to cause mayhem along Interstate 15. The Powder Gangers turned the facility into a fortified stronghold with sentries and snipers set up in the watchtowers. The highly public breakout led to the facility being monitored by Brotherhood and NCR scouts alike. From their fortress, the Powder Gangers have become a scourge on the inhabitants of the southern Mojave, attacking caravans along Interstate 15 and stealing supplies from settlers and workers. One of their biggest raids occurred on Sloan, where they stole an entire cache of dynamite used by the workers to mine Quarry Junction for the NCR's fortifications along the Colorado River. The resulting decrease of activity in the quarry led to a pack of death claws settling into the quarry and plaguing the northern reaches of the Long 15, effectively shutting down caravan traffic from the Mojave outpost to New Vegas. The prison has one main entrance, which is guarded by a powder ganger named Dawes. Snipers bolster the perimeter around the facility. Whether or not the courier has provoked powder gangers elsewhere, the powder gangers here are not hostile, unless the player character has established a negative reputation with the faction overall. Should the player character approach Dawes in disguise, he will notice that they are not an actual powder ganger and tell them so. However, he will continue in casual dialogue as long as one has a good reputation with the gang. He can unlock the door for a price of 100 caps. It is possible to pickpocket the key from him to avoid the fee. Unlike other items in his inventory, pickpocketing the key will never fail as long as the player character is hidden. 2 additional entrances can be opened if the player character betrays Eddie and helps the NCR retake the facility during I Fought the Law. One such gap in the fence is situated between the lookout tower and the visitors center, and the other is located almost directly opposite it, along the eastern fence. Upon entering the facility through the front door, one will find themselves in the visitors center, a lounge-like area with tables, a desk, a first aid box, and a counter with a broken terminal on it. There is also a fridge, a Sunset Sarsaparilla vending machine, and a Nuka-Cola vending machine. A powder ganger wearing a guard uniform stands by the door. During the same scenario as above, it is confirmed that he will propose a truce, in which the player character stays away from the gang outposts, and the gang leaves them alone. However, after hearing his offer, choosing to ignore it will not provoke any altercation. The only named non-player character here is Myers, who is relevant to my kind of town as an option for the position of sheriff in Prim. Since he is not considered part of the Powder Gangers faction, he will not attack even if the Powder Gangers in the room become hostile. Through the back door of the visitors center, the player character can enter the main prison yard. A workbench can be found near the door, along with an owned crate of explosives. Several powder gangers mill about the yard, and several are posted at the tops of the towers. 5 of the 6 towers have powder gangers posted at the top, and each contains minor stealable loot, consisting of mostly ammunition and healing items. There are upwards of 40 empty whiskey bottles lying around in the prison yard. There are 2 cell blocks located within the courtyard. Cell block A contains 2 powder gangers and a few locked containers of explosives and uniforms. In cell block B, the courier can find Carter, a small-time trader, who has set up shop in the cell block. He sells chems and a few odds and ends. A locked cell contains his stash, consisting of bottle caps in an ammo container. In this building is where Eddie, the leader of the remaining powder gangers, has set up his headquarters on the top floor in the former warden's office. Scrambler, Hannigan, and 4 unnamed powder gangers can be found in this building as well, acting as Eddie's bodyguards. Eddie holds the key to the average locked room, which contains a substantial stash of ammunition and explosives. One of the boxes always produces a random skill magazine. The unlocked room next door has a copy of Lying Congressional Style on the desk. Carter was locked away at the NCR Correctional Facility after being framed over an undisclosed amount of caps by a pit boss while working in a casino in New Reno. During his time imprisoned, he was always known as the guy who could get things. This led to his career as a trader after the powder gangers took over the facility. Dawes claims he was originally the leader of a gang in the hub back in New California. However, he was apprehended and sentenced to imprisonment in the correctional facility in the Mojave Wasteland for starting a riot. Eddie is the leader of the powder gangers and can be found on the top floor of the administration office in the NCR Correctional Facility, having occupied the warden's office. Eddie, a former NCR prisoner, assumed control over the powder gangers after Samuel Cook, the original leader of the prisoner uprising, left north with a group of followers to Vault 19 in order to wage a personal war against the NCR. Since then, Eddie has led the former prisoners as they have raided caravans passing near the NCRCF, always making sure that every powder ganger gives him a cut of the spoils. If asked for work, Eddie will give the quest "I fought the law." Killing him will result in the failure of the quest unless progressed far enough to betray him to the NCR. A positive reputation with the powder gangers will grant dynamite and various gunpowders from him. He will give out a maximum of 5 dynamite and 20 each of rifle and pistol powder once an idolized status with the powder gangers is attained. Eddie is protected at all times by 3 powder ganger bodyguards, as well as his good buddy Scrambler, the toughest member of the powder gangers. A former combat medic of the New California Republic Army, Hannigan is the acting medical specialist of the powder gangers. Before he enlisted and started medical training, he tried his hand in being a farmhand, bouncer, a bandit, and a regular NCR trooper. However, Hannigan ended up in prison after selling army medical supplies on the black market. He assumed that the quartermaster would not notice any missing medical supplies, but he soon realized that this assumption was wrong. After Samuel Cook's prison break at the NCRCF, Hannigan was promoted to doctor, since he was the only one with any sort of medical training, though only 6 months of it. Given the gangers' situation, it is better than nothing. Hannigan does not complain either, as he can weasel out of raids by pointing out that the gang cannot lose its only doctor. What Scrambler has to say to the courier marks him as an extremely violent and psychotic individual who has a very nonchalant attitude towards his crimes, homicide and infanticide, which he describes as not much when asked what he did to be sent to the NCRCF. He is also one of Eddie's bodyguards, or as he puts it, he keeps an eye on him. On occasion, friendly powder gangers may warn the courier that Scrambler is acting up more than usual and advise to stay away from him. A lawman from a small town in the West, Myers is a firm believer in justice, as long as it is his kind of justice. From time to time, he sped justice up, ignoring due process. Eventually, his practices caught up with him. He was charged with abuse of power and sentenced to prison. Transferred to the NCRCF on a work release program, Myers considered it a fair trade. He's not sorry for what he did, but justice is justice, even when he is on the wrong end. By the time the courier meets Myers, his sentence is nearly finished. When Samuel Cook started the prison break, Myers hung back and avoided getting involved. While he has a begrudging respect for Cook, he does not think much of the powder gangers, but he remains in the prison regardless and does not try and raise trouble because even he realizes when he is in no position to change things. He believes that it is better for a convict like himself to sit tight and wait for the NCR's return, rather than try to break out and end up with a bullet between the eyes. If the courier decides to betray Eddie during their dealings with the convict leader, Sergeant Lee serves as the commander of the strike force sent to retake the NCRCF from Eddie and the other powder gangers. The courier can assist in the assault by speaking to Lieutenant Hayes, who will then direct them to Lee. After they rendezvous with him, Lee establishes a plan of attack in which the strike team utilizes explosives to blast their way through the prison's fences before launching a fast-paced assault that keeps the powder gangers disorganized. He also remarks that their main goal is the elimination of Eddie, and that Eddie's death will cause the rest of the powder gangers to capitulate. If the attack is successful, Lee explains that he and his men can take it from there, and that although there may be some cleaning up to do, Eddie's death and the resulting lack of leadership means that the powder gangers will not last long. Simulation completed. Please exit the pod or have a technician select another file.